We all know that climatic changes and its implications can have both harmful and positive effects. But somewhere at times we have seen कि जो harmful effects होते हैं इसके वो बहुत ज़्यादा outweigh कर जाते हैं इसके positive impact से. और आज इस पूरे मुद्दे के ऊपर बात करने के लिए हमारे साथ यहाँ मौजूद है एक बहुत ही renowned economist and chairman International Life Science Institute India के D.H. Pai Panandiker. Welcome to the show, sir.
Thank you.
Well, first of all, let us take this opportunity to wish you also a very happy new year.
And wish you also the same.
Thank you, sir. Well, हम जानते हैं कि आप एक बहुत renowned economist हैं and you're dealing with a very important topic जो है कि climate changes. First of all, we would like to ask you, what brought you to climatic change and such an intense topic which somewhere is about preserving our earth?
See, I am chairman of International Life Sciences Institute, India. Its agenda is very wide. We look at food safety, nutrition, and biotechnology, and one of the important component is environment. In fact, we have 5 centers of excellence, and one of the center looks after environment. So environment is very much part of, when you look at the life sciences, it becomes a part of it. And that's why we thought that from now on, maybe that we will have to focus more on environment as such.
But the common perception or the common man somewhere has this perception about a certain way of climate change. हर कोई climate change के बारे में जानता नहीं है. शब्द तो हर किसी ने सुना है लेकिन आम तौर पे इंसान को समझ में नहीं आता है कि climate change होता क्या है. Normally उसके impacts जो होते हैं वो हमें पता होते हैं. But the basic meaning of climate change still remains unaware to most of the common people. So if first of all you would like to tell what is climate change?
Climate change or global warming as we call it. See, it is a very slow process. It takes place over centuries. It's not, you can't see it day after day. You see. Now, it started really with industrial revolution in the West. And in those days, they used to have, the factories to have chimneys, throwing up smokes. And so that's how the pollution started. And that pollution, what we call is it's mainly the carbon dioxide, methane gas, and other sulfuric gases, which sort of are thrown up by burning of coal, by burning of oil, by burning of other combustible materials. So all this thing goes up, and it becomes a kind of a cover. And with that cover, the temperature of the earth, temperature of the sea, all go up. Now, in the past 100 years, the increase in temperature has been about 1 degree centigrade. Now, that nobody can feel the difference, but the plants, the animals, the fish, all they are very sensitive to these changes, and that sort of starts a kind of deterioration in the whole atmosphere.
Right.
So climate change, as far as the common man is concerned, he is not seeing it, but he experiences it by way of, occasional we get floods, very extreme events like floods, droughts. These have become now taken a very large scale, and you find it everywhere, in all the places.
Yes.
And they have become more frequent.
जी.
So that is the impact of
And आपने जैसे भी कहा भी कि droughts and floods are some of the most common जो कहेंगे ना implications of climate change जो होते हैं. लेकिन इसके अगर हम पूछें आपसे कि इसका cause क्या है, what leads to global warming, कहीं ना कहीं कुछ ना कुछ तो because एक इंसान अकेले में तो करेगा नहीं, लेकिन कहते हैं ना बूंद बूंद से जैसे सागर बनता है वैसे each individual contributing in a negative way leads to the compilation of this. So what are the causes that leads to this global warming?
See, one is the factories throwing up smoke.
Right.
Particularly power projects. Power projects are the worst polluters. The other is the automobiles. So many automobiles are running, and each one throws out carbon dioxide. These are the kind of things which go up and accumulate in the atmosphere, and also they consist of small particles, solid particles. So they become a kind of a cover which hits up the earth. So that causes disturbance in the
balance of,
right, how the balance was kept earlier. So that imbalance starts.
Correct.
So you suddenly find that there is a flood taking place because of some very small cause. It may be a very small cause. Now, you, for instance, ये हमारे हिमालय में हो गया, जो शिव मंदिर था वहाँ, तो that happened because the water had accumulated in one place and suddenly it burst. Now that accumulated water, could have been siphoned off earlier, but because of the atmospheric circumstances, this water was suddenly came down, washing up everything on its path.
Right.
So that is the kind of floods we see now very commonly, whether it is India or it is Australia or it is US. Things are happening like that.
Right, but what is the government and how is the government playing a role? Government का इसमें कैसे role रहता है? Because droughts and natural calamities तो कहते हैं ना किसी के हाथ में नहीं होती हैं. But somewhere the government has to come in and make an effort to control this in their own way. What is the government doing?
You see, these, although they look like something which was not expected, unexpected, you think that one doesn't know the reason for that and so on. But each of these events can be predicted. There are mathematical models which can predict what is going to happen when and where. So these kind of models one has to work with to understand how the atmospheric situation is changing,
right,
and where it is going to happen, the next event is going to happen. So this can be to an extent predicted. Of course, these models are still not very perfect, but with lots of inputs coming, data coming from different parts of the world, and sophistication of these models, I think it's possible to predict what will happen when. And once you know that it's going to happen, then you can take preventive action. जैसे कि ये देख लीजिए आप आंध्रा में जो स्टॉर्म आया था वो प्रिडिक्ट कर दिया IMD ने, and then the people were moved away from the places जहाँ वो बारिश होने वाली थी, heavy rain. So that way, I mean, this is the way one can tackle these extreme events, and that's where the government comes in, that to have institutions which can do this kind of prediction.
Right, and we also see that climatic changes जो होते हैं कहीं ना कहीं बहुत strong impact करते हैं water resources के ऊपर. Do you think that is more of a positive impact कि इसका negative impact कहीं ना कहीं positive से बहुत ज़्यादा high है?
You see, it is mostly negative. ये देख लीजिए कि because of the increase in temperature, the ice and the snow in the Arctic, it melts.
Yes.
And when it melts, that water goes into the sea.
Correct.
Sea level is the same everywhere. So the whole sea level is raised. And some of the islands have already gone under the sea. So that is one effect. Similarly, it happens now, for instance, you take our monsoon. Our monsoon depends very much on the atmospheric changes. Now, any change in temperature, very slight change in temperature, what is called the currents which are there, sea currents, which start from South America. There, the changes which take place in even a 0.5% degree, that change causes a change in our monsoons. Now, what is going to happen our monsoon is very, very important.
Yes, that's right.
This monsoon, at the moment we are getting, let's say, from June to September, and it is fairly regular. But what will happen in future is that it will start a little early, maybe in middle of May. You will get torrential rain for a week, then that will be followed by a dry spell.
Right.
So what, I mean, similarly it will repeat itself.
On, yes.
So total rain you will be getting is much more than what we are getting now.
Right.
But the thing is, because it is coming in sort of spasms, the water that you get will rush off into the sea. You can't catch that water. Now if the rain is mild and it's not that strong, then the water soaks into the earth and your water table goes up. But if it rushes off, then
there'll be dryness.
Then the water table doesn't get any,
yes.
It's not restored.
Right.
So you lose water altogether.
Yes, we'll definitely carry on this discussion right now, sir. But we also know that there was a conference that was recently held on climatic changes and its impact in Bangalore recently. So we shall now show our viewers what this entire conference was all about.
Climate change predictions are based on models which have improved but cannot be precise in terms of time, regions, or even impact. In India, 60% of the arable land is rain-fed and depends heavily on the behavior of the monsoons. Climate change will have a direct impact on biology of plant growth, from temperature, carbon dioxide, etc., as also the indirect impact from soil conditions, water, plant entomology, and so on.
Many areas of the planet, in fact, many areas of India in particular, were uncertain as to which direction precipitation will change. These extreme weather events are impacting crop production in different ways, and the net impact on prices has been that since about the turn of the century, we've seen a reversal of the long-term trend that we were experiencing, especially as a result of the Green Revolution, where prices for important commodity crops, in this case wheat and maize, have actually been increasing since the turn of the century, but also have exhibited extreme spikes in prices, which have led to social unrest and other undesirable effects. After the failures at Copenhagen back in 2009 and no real evidence that we have any serious replacement for the Kyoto Protocol anywhere in the negotiations. It's unfortunate, but it appears to be the case that no serious reductions in emissions are in our future.
Agricultural systems are embedded within greater environmental systems. And when we modify the surface for agricultural management, we're changing the surface characteristics and the way our agricultural systems interact with all the climate system components that we see. If we supplant a forest with an agricultural field, that's going to change the local circulation systems, perhaps even the microclimates of these regions, and that's something we have to be concerned about. So the more we increase irrigation, again, the more we weaken our temperature contrast. So when we include greenhouse gases, that contrast decreases further, and that's also partly because of the warming of the Indian Ocean that we include.
So we have a large coastline, and therefore it is important for us to look at the sea level rise, but most of our water resources come from our river basins. This also has implication on the groundwater recharge, and then on the water demands Ours is a primarily agrarian country, and therefore about 75% of the water is being used for agriculture. First, we need to address the evapotranspirative demands of the crops apart from the other demands and so on. So there are a large number of issues that we need to address as far as our country is concerned.
Why does this yield gap increase with rainfall? Well, the major difference in the management at agricultural stations and farms is applications of fertilizers and pesticides. These do not enhance yield in poor rainfall years. So in the absence of a reliable forecast of no drought, farmers do not consider them cost effective and hence do not invest in them. However, in normal or good monsoon years, yield enhancement due to this application is very large, and hence the yield gap increases with seasonal rainfall. So to increase the effectiveness of rainfall in the absence of droughts, it is necessary to adopt farming strategies using the predicted frequency of occurrence or non-occurrence of droughts. So prediction of extremes of monsoon is what is important.
A drought can be prevented, a drought can be mitigated, hardships can be minimized, sufferings can be reduced if we all work together. There were 24 large droughts in between 1891 to 2012, and there were more incidences of drought in between 1891, 2002 drought with 2012 drought, which is also considered as a severe drought. So if you compare, in the 2002 drought, there was almost 12% reduction in crop production. Most affected states were, as usual, Maharashtra, Karnataka, Gujarat, Rajasthan, and there was impact on groundwater extraction and the cost of extraction also. Lowering of submersible pump by 3 to 4 meters, replacing of low HP motors with higher HP, excessive consumption of electricity and diesels. Because even the storage of water in the major dams and all, it was very low.
Major area which are getting flooded is of the Brahmaputra, Ganga, and some part of the Odisha and West Bengal. These are the states which are getting affected. And the annual average cropped area means because of flood, agriculture is also affected. Not only the people are affected, but their agriculture practices are also affected, and crops are getting submerged under the water. Every year, the flood damages are increasing, and there are many reasons of this, because we have seen that when population is increasing, then people are encroaching upon the floodplain. So those areas which are susceptible to flood, as such, there is no policy from the government side to restrict the people to encroach upon the floodplain. As a result, even though if this similar trend is observed in the flood, people are getting affected, and the lot of damages of the lives and properties are being seen in those areas.
We have more than 5,000 glaciers, and the northern 3 major rivers of our country, they are fed by snow and glacier melt runoff. So we can say that we are getting a very good amount of runoff, stream flow in those rivers, as well as hydropower generation, if we see, that contributes about 26% of the total installed capacity in India. The rate, volume and timing of snowmelt are likely to change. That therefore impact of climate change on the snowmelt runoff and total stream flow of the large Himalayan region should be investigated. By the end of this century or by 2050, we will get more runoff, but maybe afterwards we will get less runoff because of the loss of the glaciers.
Just like the rivers in India, Indus, Ganges and Brahmaputra, it's fed by the high elevation Himalayan regions. In California, we don't have glaciers, but we rely on snowpack. Snowpack provides about a third of the runoff in the state of California. Climate change, the main point is warming air. And that's a known fact, you know. So there's one thing you can count on in terms of climate change, it's going to get warmer. And actually it has warmed up already for the last few decades. We've been trying to make a good assessment on the vulnerability on the water resources in the state of California and ways to mitigate or curb the impacts of climate change.
वेल सर, हमने देखा कि किस तरह से क्लाइमेट चेंज के जो इम्पैक्ट्स हैं काफ़ी नेगेटिव हैं, एंड वन इंपॉर्टेंट एस्पेक्ट दैट यू आल्सो डिस्कस्ड ओवर देयर एंड योर कलीग्स आल्सो डिस्कस्ड वाज अबाउट इट्स इम्पैक्ट ऑन एग्रीकल्चर, कि किस तरह से क्लाइमेट चेंज सबसे ज़्यादा ड्रास्टिक इम्पैक्ट्स जो देता है वो एग्रीकल्चर के ऊपर होता है. व्हाट डज इट लीड टू फ्रॉम देयर?
See, the crops require a temperature at different times. The kind of temperature they need when it is ripening is slightly different. That's why you find that the wheat is grown only in the north because it requires a certain temperature, and it ripens in March when the temperature goes up. So there is a cycle there, and the crops have adapted to that cycle. Now what will happen is when the climate change comes and the temperature goes up by say 1 degree, the yield which comes from wheat or rice will drop by about 5%. In fact, the there is an intergovernmental panel for climate change. They have predicted that every 10 years there will be a fall in productivity of agricultural crops by about 2%. Every 10 years, 2% reduction. So which is a very severe thing, and for a country like India where population is still increasing, where lots of poor people have to be given food grains at very concessional prices, the demand for food grains is going to increase. And unless our crops, unless agriculture
ripens up,
produces that kind of crop, there will be shortage. Prices will jump. So it is very important that something must be done about improving the productivity in spite of the temperature
something must be
rise.
done, which brings a very important question to our minds, which is that this something has to be something important and fruitful. What do you think are the steps in which we can conserve global warming and just prevent it from spreading at such a rampant way at which it is right now expanding its roots completely?
See, the global warming cannot be stopped now. Even if suppose there is no emission,
controlled?
Even if there is no emission, still the temperature will rise till the end of this century. So what our emphasis has been in this conference is how to adapt to the change that is going to take place. Instead of preventing the change, which is very, very difficult, how to adapt to the change that is taking place. Now, if agriculture productivity goes down, then how do we treat that problem? Then we develop new seeds, just as we did in the 1970s, hybrid seeds. Now we can have new seeds which can withstand the increase in temperature. So we are actually making the plants have a new life altogether, which will be more productive in spite of the temperature increase that is taking place. Right. So, and already the government institution, particularly the Indian Council of Agriculture Research, they have been developing this kind of seeds. Similarly, bark, they have also developed some seeds which which will increase the productivity of crops. So, attempts are being made to tackle this problem.
But it's a long drawn process that will take time.
It is, absolutely a long drawn process, but I think things will come out.
Yes, in some way it's also important to maintain the balance of the whole situation, because if there wouldn't have been such negativities like maybe floods or droughts, the balance of the entire earth, should we say, would go completely havoc that ways also.
Yeah, that's right.
We need to have that also somewhere.
Of course, you see, there are different ways. Water is probably this main thing in this, that water which is rushing into the sea because of the monsoon being very heavy, how that water can be conserved. That's one area where a lot of thought will have to be given and investment will have to be made. Maybe in some places you will have to build dams and so on. The other long-term solution, which is very, very expensive but which can be undertaken, is interlinking of rivers.
Right.
Now, for instance, when there is flood in the Ganges, that water can be diverted to Narmada or
Right.
some other.
The interconnecting rivers that are joined to it
interconnecting
somewhere, yes, the
rivers.
smaller ones.
So that's a very expensive way of doing it, but it will increase our productivity of
Yes,
agriculture.
that water can also be utilized for
substantially.
positive things,
Yeah.
right, for outcomes.
Today we are producing about 250 million tons. But if this kind of arrangement is made, we can produce 400 million tons.
Yes, definitely. Well, keeping those hopes alive and somewhere hoping that we do get positive results out of this, even out of such a negative thing. Well, thank you so much, Panandiker sir, for coming over here with us today. It was just a pleasure having you over here today. And hopefully, once again, we wish you a very, very happy New Year. Have a beautiful New Year, sir.
Thank you very much.
दोस्तों, अब मैं साक्षी आपसे इजाज़त लूँगी, लेकिन चलते चलते एक बार फिर से आप सभी को नए साल की बहुत बहुत शुभकामनाएं. Wish you all a very happy, prosperous, blessed and a healthy new year. Keep your resolutions, live up to it, enjoy life and live every day with a smile and full heart. Till then, it's goodbye.